Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Wonderful things to share with you today. We've got a special health feature, and Wendy's here with us, and I want to ask Wendy one simple question. Have you got short telomeres or long ones?
I hope they're short, right? I want short ones. No,
Short means you're going to die. Long ones mean you're living longer.
I need to be educated on what those are, apparently.
Telomeres are the things in your DNA, and as you age, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. And as short as they get, it means you're getting ready to die. I want you to have long ones, to live a long, long life.
Ooh, I want to find out what those are.
All right, well, we'll be telling you. Laurie Johnson has got a health feature. And the other thing, we're going to talk about the most expensive painting that's ever been sold in the world. It is enormously expensive, and we'll tell you which it was and how much they spent for it. Huge. Well, congressional Republicans will take their first major step toward tax reform today. They vote on their bill in the House after President Trump speaks to them on Capitol Hill.
But passing a tax bill in the Senate might be harder, as one Republican is already saying he won't vote for the tax bill as it stands now. Abigail Robertson brings us the story from Washington.
As the House gears up to pass its version of tax reform, some question whether the two chambers will be able to clear up any differences and reach consensus before Christmas. Senator Thom Tillis says yes.
About 60–70% of the base policy, I think we've already got common ground. And I also think that some of the things that weren't in the House bill, now that we've had time to hear from the business community, do more economic modeling, there's even some of the changes that we'll make will be well received. So that level of commonality is even higher than when it first came to the Senate.
Unlike the House plan, the Senate bill calls for a one-year delay in phasing and cutting the tax rate on businesses. The reason? They want to make that lower rate permanent under Senate rules. Tillis says he knows from experience how much cutting the corporate tax rate can help the economy.
I've done it before and it works. In North Carolina, we focused on reducing the corporate tax rate. We went from one of the slowest growing state economies to now one of the fastest growing state economies.
The Senate plan also takes a step toward weakening Obamacare by repealing the individual mandate that forces people to buy insurance or pay a penalty, a move supported by conservatives in both chambers. And on the House side, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy tells CBN News the tax reform bill is pro-growth and looks out for both churches and families.
It lets you put away for a future for your unborn child, which has never been done before in a tax code. And also it protects us, the churches. So many times we had government telling us what we can say inside our churches. A lot of people know about the Johnson Amendment. This one takes care of that.
The Johnson Amendment forbids nonprofit organizations, including churches and ministries, from supporting or opposing political candidates. Republican Senator James Lankford feels confident the final bill in both chambers will include a repeal of the Johnson Amendment.
We feel very good about protecting the free speech rights of every American, regardless of their faith, for-profit, nonprofit status, whatever it may be. We feel like this is going to be the opportunity to be able to repair this.
But the massive tax overhaul could be in trouble, with Republican Senator Ron Johnson announcing he won't support it. GOP senators can only afford 2 no votes, or the bill won't pass, but they remain optimistic. Republican leaders feel confident they will reach a compromise on the details and have a bill on the president's desk by the end of this year. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. Wonderful news. But listen, that Ron Johnson, what he is saying essentially is that he'd like small businesses to get the same deal that the major corporations are getting. And that means that S-corps will not be penalized. And that's an easy thing to fix. And he's not opposed to this bill. What he wants to do is make it a bit more lenient for small businesses. And so I think they won't have too much trouble getting some support for that. But it looks like all these major issues are getting solved. And the Senate and the House are moving together to get a bill. And I think the way they're working now, they talk about it before the end of the year. I think they'll have a bill before the end of before Thanksgiving. They really are working, and the House looks like it's going to pass tax reform with all the features that look good. So, good news. Well, in other news, President Trump also says he's brought the nations of Asia together to stand against North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Charlene Aaron has that.
That's right, Pat. The president says he made clear that other countries, aside from the U.S., must force North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions.
I called on every nation, including China and Russia, to unite in isolating the North Korean regime, cutting off all ties of trade and commerce until it stops its dangerous provocation on, and this is the whole key to what we're doing, on denuclearization.
China is North Korea's traditional ally and accounts for about 90% of Pyongyang's trade and virtually all its oil. USA Today points out that North Korea has now gone 2 months without test firing a missile. That is the longest stretch this year without a launch. Well, the grand opening of the Museum of the Bible in Washington is tomorrow. The museum shows how the Bible has affected society throughout history. But a question we sought to answer is how and where is God himself, Jesus, represented inside the museum? David Brody brings us that story.
When you walk into the Museum of the Bible, there is a huge wow factor. This building is beautiful. A lot of electronic gadgets, gizmos, displays, movies, cool sound effects. But what about the Jesus factor? In other words, where is Jesus in this museum exactly? After all, he is God.
You can't tell the story of the Bible without telling the story of Jesus.
Museum officials say you will find Jesus, and indeed there are references to him sprinkled throughout. He's also mentioned during a video in archaeological findings in Capernaum.
That structure dates to the period that Jesus would have taught.
And a Jesus plaque explains how gospel writers say Jesus called himself the Son of Man. But that plaque is nestled in between the plaques of other historical biblical figures.
From a content perspective, it's Museum of the Bible. Now, the Bible has lots of characters. One of those characters is Jesus. So Jesus is an important character throughout the museum. I think that the focus is more on the historical spread of the Bible.
It sure seems that way because trying to find an image of Jesus in the museum beyond traditional church art proved unsuccessful.
We did not show any image of Jesus here, and that was intentional. We decided that it's best not, because there is no actual photographic or actual image of him, to not venture and bring our opinions here. And so that's why you won't see a picture of Jesus in the museum.
But what about the biblical story of his birth? In the 12-minute movie devoted to the New Testament, it's not mentioned.
It is the New Testament movie. Why not the birth? Why not the teachings of Jesus? That really wasn't there. Was there a reason behind that?
Well, in 12 minutes, you have to be selective. So we decided that really our main theme was going to be the spread of this small group. They start with a few Jewish believers. They expand into a larger pool of Jewish believers, and then it expands around the world into a church of Jew and Gentile.
But beyond the movie, there is no actual area devoted to Christ's birth, death, and resurrection, despite the fact that there are 5 exhibit floors and more than 400,000 square feet of space.
When you're looking at actual exhibit spaces, I mean, it is a museum about the Bible, so it's going to tend to have a lot of, manuscripts and books. You only have so much space. We decided to try to feature what's the influence on, music and literature, and in those, you're going to have the impact of Jesus and maybe nativity, within references to songs and films and things like that. So again, it's a bit of a different approach.
But when you tour the Nazareth village where Jesus grew up, there's no mention of Jesus' time there. It's more about the Nazarene culture. So what are we to make of all of this? Well, keep in mind that the mission of the museum changed over the years. In 2011, the mission was, quote, to bring to life the living Word of God, to tell its compelling story of preservation, and to inspire confidence in the absolute authority and reliability of the Bible. Today, the mission is more scholastic in nature, where they, quote, invite all people to engage with the history, narrative, and impact of the Bible. Officials here are hoping this good book, called the Bible, spurs curiosity, especially with those who question its authenticity.
We hope that people are so interested in the narrative of the Bible that they pick up and they start reading, whether it's the Gospels or the epistles or anything in the Hebrew Bible. That's our hope.
David Brody, CBN News.
We should also point out that there are temporary exhibits that are part of the museum from time to time, and one of them is the Stations of the Cross, depicting the last hours of Jesus' life. And you can find our special behind-the-scenes coverage of the new Museum of the Bible at cbnnews.com. A painting of Christ by famed artist Leonardo da Vinci has fetched a record-breaking price at auction, $450 million. The painting is called Salvator Mundi, which means Savior of the World. It was painted by da Vinci in the late 1400s. Since then, it has traded hands all over the world, from King Charles I of England all the way to Louisiana in 2005. There, a group of art dealers paid less than $10,000 for the painting, which was in need of repair. The dealers restored it and documented its authenticity. And this week, art lovers lined up outside Christie's auction house to catch a glimpse of the famed portrait. Pat?
Can you believe that? The salvation of the world, Da Vinci, $450 million.
Interesting. He depicted Christ to the best of his ability, but there's not any pictures of Jesus in the Bible Museum.
I just can't believe it. But anyhow, 450, that's almost as much as they spent. They spent $500 million on that Museum of the Bible. So this one picture has brought almost as much money as that enormous museum.
You know.
That is an incredible thing of Da Vinci. I guess they figure it's like having the Mona Lisa, but a group of art dealers in Louisiana bought the thing for about $10,000.
It was interesting because they talked about, well, the Bible has many characters, but you know, there's always a star in the movie, right? So
I just can't believe it, because the Greens are just dedicated Christian people, and you know, leaving that out, I think they're so intent on not having controversy with other faiths.
Yeah.
They want to have everybody come to look at the Bible. Well, okay, we love them, and I appreciate them, so I don't want to do anything to dump on these fine people.